Long before humanity ever dreamed of dimensional travel, there existed a place that defied every natural law we thought we understood. Not a planet, not a galaxy, something else entirely. A realm suspended between dimensions, drifting in the spaces between worlds, a place the scientists of Black Mesa would one day call Xen, the border world. To look at Xen is to feel immediately that something is wrong. The landscape floats in fragments, massive rocky islands, suspended above a void of swirling violet light, with no sky, no horizon, no sun. Strange organic growths cling to every surface. The air hums with an energy that feels alive. And in many ways, it is. Xen isn't simply a dead rock in another dimension. It is an ecosystem, ancient, complex, and governed by forces that took millions of years to shape it into what it became. At the foundation of Xen's ecology sits one of the most important organisms in the entire Half-Life universe, the Nihilanth crystal, or more precisely, the Xen crystal formations that saturate the world. These crystals aren't decorative. They are the lifeblood of the dimension. They pulse with an exotic energy, a resonant frequency that ties Xen to other dimensions, acting like anchors or transmitters. Every creature that evolved on Xen, every organism that thrived in its strange gravity, did so in relationship with this energy. It shaped their biology, their behavior, and ultimately, their fate. The creatures of Xen are unlike anything from Earth. The head crab, small and grotesque, evolved to latch onto the skulls of host organisms, hijacking their nervous systems to survive. The bull squid, aggressive and territorial, hunted the floating islands with pack instincts. The houndai, despite its alien appearance, communicated through sound, emitting sonic pulses to coordinate with its kind. And then there were the vortigaunts, tall, three-armed, intelligent beings who would eventually become one of the most important species in the entire story. The vortigaunts were not simple creatures. They were sentient. They had culture, spiritual understanding, and a deep connection to the energy of Xen itself. But by the time the events of Half-Life unfold, they are not free. They are slaves. The being responsible for that enslavement was the Nihilanth. Little is known about where the Nihilanth came from, or how long it had existed. What is known is that it was a creature of immense psychic power, a towering, bloated figure with an oversized head and undersized limbs, forced to float because its own body could no longer support its weight. Physically, it was grotesque, but mentally, it was extraordinary. The Nihilanth possessed the ability to create and control teleportation portals, stable rifts between dimensions, and it used this power to dominate everything around it. The vortigaunts, despite their intelligence and their connection to Xen's ambient energy, could not resist. The Nihilanth subjugated them completely, binding them psychically. Their energy, their will, their very life force became fuel for the Nihilanth's power. They did not serve willingly. They served because they had no choice. But there's something even darker underneath this story. The Nihilanth itself was not free either. Xen, for all its strangeness, was not where the Nihilanth originated. The Nihilanth had been driven there, forced into the border world as a refugee, fleeing something even more powerful than itself. An enemy so vast and calculating that the Nihilanth had no option but to flee into the spaces between dimensions and make Xen its last stronghold. That enemy was the Combine, an interdimensional empire that had already consumed countless worlds. Xen was not a kingdom, it was a hiding place, a desperate last refuge for a being that had already lost everything else. This context changes the Nihilanth entirely. It is still a tyrant. It still enslaved the vortigaunts. Its cruelty was real. But underneath the cruelty was fear, the fear of something far worse waiting on the other side. The Nihilanth had already seen what the Combine could do, and it had run as far as it could run. For a long time, Xen remained hidden, an unknown dimension, inaccessible to the outside universe. But that changed because of humanity's ambition. On Earth, a covert research facility buried inside a mesa in New Mexico called Black Mesa had been pushing the boundaries of teleportation science for years. Their researchers had discovered the existence of Xen, had even made contact with it in limited ways, and had begun conducting expeditions to collect specimens and study the alien flora and fauna. For the scientists, it was the discovery of a lifetime. For Xen, it was the beginning of the end. Specimen collection meant portals, small ones, carefully opened and closed. But every time Black Mesa breached the dimensional barrier, the fabric between worlds was weakened slightly. The crystals of Xen resonated with the intrusions, and the Nihilanth, sitting at the center of its psychic web, felt every one of them. What the scientists at Black Mesa didn't fully understand was that their most valuable resource, a rare anomalous material they used to power their experiments, was itself a product of Xen, a crystalline substance saturated with the same exotic energy that defined the dimension. And on May 16th, 200 something, a scientist named Gordon Freeman was assigned to push a sample of this material through a high-energy beam in the anti-mass spectrometer. The resulting resonance cascade didn't just destroy the test chamber. It tore a wound between Earth and Xen so severe that portals began opening spontaneously across the entire facility. Creatures flooded through. Headcrabs dropped from shimmering rifts in break rooms and laboratories. Bull squids rampaged through flooded corridors. And the Vortigaunts bound to the Nihilanths will arrive as soldiers, serving their master's interest in this new dimensional breach. But here is the tragic dimension of that moment. The Vortigaunts that came through were not conquerors by nature. They were enslaved soldiers, psychically compelled to fight, unable to refuse. Their aggression on Earth was not their own. Every one of them that killed a human being that day did so under a psychic leash they could not break. The resonance cascade was a catastrophe for Black Mesa. But for the Nihilanth, it was something else, an opportunity. For the first time, a stable connection between Xen and a populated world had been violently forced open. The Nihilanth could now push its forces through. It could extend its reach beyond Xen for the first time since fleeing the Combine. Whether this was strategy, desperation, or both is impossible to say. What is clear is that the Nihilanth immediately began directing its enslaved Vortigaunts through the breach. Earth, from the Nihilanth's perspective, was either a new territory to dominate, or possibly even a new place to hide, a world beyond the Combine's current reach. As all of this unfolded, Gordon Freeman fought his way through Black Mesa, and eventually, almost unbelievably, made it to Xen itself. Xen, as Gordon experienced, it was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The floating islands, the bioluminescent organisms, the waterfalls cascading off rock faces into endless void below. It had its own gravity, low and disorienting, that made movement feel dreamlike, and it was populated with creatures that had evolved in this precise environment, perfectly adapted to a world without stable ground or consistent physics. Gordon moved through this alien landscape with one destination ahead of him, the Nihilanth. The journey through Xen was not simply a physical one. It was a confrontation with the full strangeness of what Xen was, an ancient, interdimensional ecosystem that had been warped by the presence of a deeply powerful and deeply frightened being at its center. Every creature Gordon encountered, every structure he passed, was part of a world the Nihilanth had bent around itself over decades or centuries. When Gordon finally reached the Nihilanth, the confrontation was unlike anything else in the game. The creature fought with psychic energy and teleportation, sending Gordon ricocheting between pocket dimensions as it raged and screamed, and in those screaming words, there was something unexpected. Not pure malice, something closer to despair. The Nihilanth was not simply angry, it was terrified. It spoke of another, a greater threat, and implied that Gordon had no idea what he was helping bring about by killing it. It was right. When Gordon destroyed the Nihilanth, the psychic chains that had bound the Vortigaunts shattered instantly. Every Vortigaunt across Xen and on Earth felt it. At the same moment, the crushing weight of enslavement simply gone. For the first time in their living memory, they were free. But the death of the Nihilanth also had another consequence. The dimensional instability it had been managing, the careful control of the barriers between Xen and other dimensions collapsed. The portal storms that had been brewing since the resonance cascade grew dramatically worse. Rifts tore open across Earth, pulling alien fauna through randomly. And in the chaos of those failing barriers, something vast and patient noticed the open door, the Combine. The same empire the Nihilanth had spent its entire existence fleeing was now looking directly at Earth. The Nihilanth had, in its desperate isolation in Xen, been inadvertently serving as a kind of barrier. Its psychic presence and control over dimensional travel had kept the border world contained. With it gone, there was nothing left between Earth and the Combine's attention. Within 7 hours, the Combine had conquered Earth. The Vortigaunts, now free, became something extraordinary. Freed from the Nihilanth's grip, their natural connection to Xen's energy, what they understood as a kind of universal life force, flowing through all living things, could finally be expressed on their own terms. They became allies, healers, spiritual guides, beings who could channel dimensional energy not as weapons, but as something far more profound. Xen itself, meanwhile, endured. The dimension didn't vanish when the Nihilanth died. Its ecosystems, its floating rocks, its crystalline formations, all of it persisted. By the time of Half-Life Alyx, set roughly 2 decades after the Black Mesa incident, the Combine had established themselves in Xen as well, mining its crystalline resources to power their machinery. The dimension that had once been the Nihilanth's hiding place was now being harvested by the very empire the Nihilanth had fled. There is something almost poetic in that. Xen had survived ancient forces, dimensional collapse, and the death of its most powerful inhabitant, only to be colonized by the empire that had haunted its last rulers every waking moment. The border world, for all its alien beauty, had always been a place defined by something being lost, a dimension that existed between other things, never quite belonging to any of them. Xen is not simply a setting in the Half-Life universe. It is a mirror. It reflects the fragility of boundaries between dimensions, between freedom and enslavement, between power and fear. The Nihilanth was a monster, but a monster with a history. The Vortigaunts were enemies, but enemies without a choice. And Earth, standing at the edge of something it didn't understand, became the stage for consequences it could never have predicted. The border world is still out there, somewhere between everything, drifting, ancient, waiting, and somewhere in the hum of its crystals, you can almost hear the echo of what it used to be before the Nihilanth, before Black Mesa, before any of this began. A strange and beautiful world, suspended in the dark between stars that belonged only to itself. And that was the story of Xen, a dying world caught between survival and extinction. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Half-Life lore, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more game timelines and hidden stories. See you in the next one.